Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Z. I am a clinical psychologist specializing in transgender adult care. Welcome to my channel. If you're new or a regular, viewer on this channel who has not had a chance to subscribe yet, I would very much appreciate if you do subscribe. This way you will be not only supporting my content, but helping so many other people find this content. So I would very much appreciate if you do subscribe to this channel. It not only helps me, like I said, it helps everybody else. Excuse me. For today's video, let's explore when transition is not worth it. I think we spent a lot of times talking about the importance of gender transition, how much it can benefit one's life, how much it can help alleviate gender dysphoria, how essential it is for so many individuals' well-being. But I think we seldom talk about when a person is at the crossroads. And when that person is at the crossroads and they have to actually ask themselves, is it even worth it for me at this point in my life? Am I really going to get the benefits that it's meant to deliver? Most importantly, if I do get the benefits it's going to deliver, will I actually reap the rewards of those benefits? I think considering whether transition is even worth it is a very important question to ask oneself. Again, I think today we're so inundated with ideas of dysphoria equals you must transition. That's the only way, that's the only treatment, quotation marks, because I hate that word treatment, cure, the only option out there. And a part of it is that a lot of us make it seem like it is the only option when clearly there's a lot of people, a lot of viewers who are watching this right now, who may have been living and struggled with gender dysphoria for decades and decades and decades. You may have even, some of you may have even found your own ways of coping and managing gender dysphoria, where, yeah, it is there, but it may not be so debilitating. And so for a lot of you, you may also be residing in places where transition just in general, forget even considering whether it's worth it, it may not be an option. So I think it's important to also consider, is it worth it? In my experience, and I've been working with transgender adults for close to 20 years now, in my experience, one of the things that I found is that this question of, is it actually worth it for me, often is a question that asked by older adults. I would say it's usually people who fall into two older adults categories. On one hand, I have people who are in their mid-30s who ask this question. And partially they ask this question, is it even worth it for me right now? Because, or just in general, is it even worth it for me? Because they, by that time, have careers, established careers perhaps, or they have lives established around it. Might be other things going on, and they just don't know if it's going to benefit them in the long run. The second group of adults who ask me this question are older adults. I would say people 55 and up, who also have their life situated, who more than careers, having their career situated, although that is undeniably true for a lot of them, have their interpersonal lives situated. They have partners, they have children, they may have grandchildren, they have a lot of friendships. And so the question, is it even worth it, tends to kind of stem from this part of, do I really want to rock, in other words, everything that I have going for me? People in their 30s ask the same question too. Do I really want to rock what I have going for me? Now, without a doubt, to even ask yourself, is transition going to be worth it for me, is an incredibly personal decision. It is a decision that nobody can make for you. It is a decision that is situated not only in your context, in your life, but situated within your own goals. And most of all, it is a decision that is situated between you and your relationship to your gender, and also whether or not you're experiencing gender dysphoria. Because remember, people who transition don't necessarily always experience gender dysphoria. Although my primarily experience stems from working with a lot of people who do transition because they do experience gender dysphoria. So while it's without a doubt, a very personal decision that only you can make. As a psychologist in this field, who worked in this field for almost 2 decades, in my professional opinion, one of the elements when I do think gender transition, any elements of transition, by the way, social, medical, surgical, you name it, becomes worth it, in my clinical opinion, is when gender dysphoria is, I don't want to say severe enough because even the level of severity is subjective state of being. But when the dysphoria, in other words, when living with gender dysphoria has so many negative effects on your life and affects your happiness, your joy, affects your relationship to yourself in such a way where stepping into some elements of transition will undeniably bring more joy, more happiness, and alleviate the distress you feel. In that way, I feel like it is worth it. And for people who do have quite a bit of gender dysphoric distress and where it's clearly affects their life, this is what we talk about is that, even though you have your life situated around you, you don't want to, you feel like you're going to be giving it all up. Also, continuing to living life with this level of distress is continue to torment yourself. But what I really want to talk about today is not when somebody has dysphoria that is at a level where you decide to step in a transition to feel better, to feel less stressed and to feel more connected to yourself. But where whether the distress is present or not, where you find yourself in a point of your life where you're thinking, okay, yes, there's possibility that if I step into gender transition, it may have all of these benefits. But I also have to realistically look at what might be potential losses or potential issues that might arise of whether I step into when I step into transition. And is it really worth it? People who do this, is it really worth it? Usually people who have managed to deal with the gender dysphoric distress for many years, maybe even have found a way to cope with it. Maybe their dysphoria is not even that severe at all. It's very mild or pretty neutral. They're not in so much pain where they absolutely have to transition. Their pain is so minimal, or they got so, we all get adjusted and acclimate to pain, unfortunately. We're all so masochistic in that regard. But they got so also habituated to it where they feel like they can be living with it. But most importantly, a lot of times in my experience, people ask themselves and they start evaluating, well, I'm at this point in my life. If I were to transition, I really would want to fully pass. Passing becomes again a priority for a lot of people. And that means some kind of gender affirming surgery, financial expenses, and what if even that not going to get me to the goal that I want? Also, how many more years do I have to really living in my aligned gender? I think all of these questions are valid to ask oneself. And those are the questions I explore with a lot of my clients. And I do see a lot of clients who decide that it's not worth it for them, given their circumstances. It's not that they don't want to, and it's not that they don't think it's important, but for them, living a fully openly, um, ex- openly, how should I say it? Not only openly life in regards to your authentic gender, but also navigating life in your authentic gender. It's just not they feel like it's not going to give them the benefit they want. Some people feel like that the benefit that they would have gotten out of it would have been many years ago versus now. So I think a lot of you watching this may be also um, grappling with this type of question. Is it even worth it for me at this point in my life? One of the things that I do think that if you are in this kind of position, is to ask yourself, well, if you were to continue the way you're continuing now without stepping any gender transition services. Is this something that is actually going to be sustainable for you? Is it something that is actually going to have a very strong potential future pain point for you? Some people say, you know what, Dr. Z, I just recently came out to my partner of many years, and for the first time, I'm being open with my partner, and I'm open that I don't think I'm going to transition, and my partner is comfortable if I sometimes allow myself to be feminized, and that's been working for us. That's been working for me. It gives me that comfort level that I need. It makes me feel connected to myself. It gives me relief. For me right now, this is kind of a perfect balance. If this is the balance you find yourself in, sometimes we have to find little things we can bring into our life that maybe almost this points in between, right? This little steps you can take in between that may be all that you may need. Now, again, by no means, if you really want to go through gender transition, of course, you as adults, I think all of you have to decide for yourself. If you are constantly wondering, is it worth it for me? Just allow yourself permission to contemplate the thought and be okay that maybe it's not going to be worth it for you in your own justification of it. But then ask yourself, are there anything else, like any other tiny things you can do or make steps toward maybe feeling more connected to yourself or steps toward being able to express that part of yourself, to be able to achieve some sort of relief or connection to yourself or happiness to yourself. It's it's sort of kind of, this question of is it even worse at this point in my life draws parallel to, and I know it's still very, very different parallel, but the way that I want you to think about it is it draws parallel to when, for example, let's say I've been occupying being psychologist all of my life, right? And I'm in my 40s now, and I suddenly realized that I love being a psychologist, I enjoy it. But there's a bigger part of me that maybe always wanted to pursue a career in something else, pursue a career in being a chef, for example. I think it would be very prudent of me to ask myself at this point in my life, should I pursue that career? It's going to be worth it for me. Is it going to give me my benefits to me that I want? Some people undeniably drop everything. The calling to be a chef is so strong, just like for a lot of you, the calling to embody womanhood and to live as women is so strong in you, right? Where it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's going to be, the question of whether it's worth it doesn't even enter your mind. But for some people, the calling is not so strong. And that's when people wonder, is it even going to be worth it? It often happens when the calling is maybe not so strong. So if the calling for me to become chef is not so strong, I most likely won't pursue it. But I may take on some cooking classes, or I may start exploring my creativity in the kitchen in an attempt to allow that part of myself to come through, to experience it, to give that part of myself a connection, to give that part to myself an outlet to express itself. And for a lot of you, that's what I'm talking about. If you're in that position where you're wondering, is it even worth it? And maybe you're coming to a conclusion that it's not, that the whole medical and surgical is not, it just doesn't make sense to you in your life right now. It's just not, seems overwhelming maybe right now. The distress again is not so strong. Again, that's your prerogative to decide if that's you. Then do consider my suggestion to you is do consider then what else you can do to express that a little bit, right? So if the calling is not so strong, how can you still allow this part to externalize in some shape or form, so that you at least get to experience it a little bit? But again, I do think that these conversations do need to happen. Is it really worth it? Because I don't think the transition is like absolute direct, how should I say it, absolute direct way of making somebody feel 1000% better, because that's not true. It is incredibly helpful to people who are struggling with dysphoria, incredibly helpful for people who have that strong calling, who have that strong need to align themselves. And then there's some people who, when you live so many decades with gender dysphoria, a lot of people, the reality is that there's a lot of people who also find a way to have a more adaptability toward the duality of the genders they experience. And by the duality of the genders they experience, what I mean, some of you may exactly know what I'm talking about, where you have got also acclimated to living your life in assigned gender. It doesn't mean that you are super comfortable or feel connected to it or love it, but you can do it. It doesn't cause you a lot of distress. And you also have the side of you that wants to come out. And so as a result, a lot of people start to experience what I call not what I call, but what's out there known as gender fluidity, where you feel a little bit more fluid between the two. As a byproduct of so many years living with it, that can happen too. And for those individuals, for a lot of them, this question, is it even worth it, becomes very important thing to consider. So if you are at this crossroads and you're wondering, is it even worth it? It is a very valid question, in my opinion, to consider. Um, and by dwelling deeper into this question, you may come to realization that, oh, it's definitely worth it. And I think that's also an important thing, right? By taking yourself in the exploration, what this question even mean for you, you may derive at an answer, or you may come to conclusion that it's not worth it for you at all. So comment below, let me know if you are struggling with this question, if you found yourself at the crossroads, and if you did find yourself at the crossroads, what did you decide to do, and what was the what was important in you making decision one way or another? I think there's nothing wrong if you. I had a lot of clients who decided it's not worth it. We worked on other things they can do to express themselves to alleviate the distress they feel. And I respect their decision. I don't believe that transition is for everybody, and I believe that all adults have to make decision what fits best their life. So comment below, let me know. Love hearing all of your comments, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.